This week, Governor Hochul plans on packing the subway with NYPD officers. Plus,
did you do it? Did you stab that innocent child?
A 14-year-old boy is stabbed and killed. And the MTA comes up with a spiky solution for combating fare evaders. Right now, Fox 5's Crime in the City. Before we get to this week's crimes, our first story is a major announcement from Governor Kathy Hochul. She proposes every subway station in New York City will have a uniformed officer on board subway platforms and trains from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul raising eyebrows for one of the proposals in her State of the State address.
So she wants to have an NYPD officer on every single subway train during the overnight hours. And that's not all. Fox 8's Morgan Mackay is live in Herald Square for us. Morgan, what can you tell us?
Hey, Steve and Natasha. So Mayor Eric Adams today said that both he and NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch are in full support of having officers on every single overnight subway train for the next 6 months. Now, this still has to be approved by state lawmakers, but this is part of a multi-pronged approach lawmakers are trying to take right now to make the subway safer and to make riders feel safer. And they say one of the ways they want to do this is by closing loopholes in the mental health care system that they say have created a revolving door, starting first with removing the mentally ill off the subway and getting them into treatment. Right now, hospitals can't commit someone to hospitalization against their will unless they show signs they are a danger to themselves or others, which has forced hospitals to release people back onto the streets even when they likely need care. But Hochul is proposing expanding this law so hospitals can involuntarily commit someone who is also showing signs that they can't care for their basic needs.
This is going to clarify the mental hygiene law and clarify the criteria around involuntary admission so clinicians have clearer guidance on being able to admit patients who are unable to care for their basic needs in the community, because right now it's a little bit of a gray area.
The other loophole that lawmakers are looking to close is what happens after treatment. Those struggling with severe mental illness are sent to a facility where they receive 24/7 treatment for 1 to 3 weeks. But after that, these people are released. Many have nowhere to go and end up back on the streets. Adams announcing today a new pilot program that will take 100 people transferring out of treatment and temporarily house them in a facility where they can continue to receive care while also looking for permanent housing.
We know New Yorkers cycle between hospital and homelessness. The new facility will provide a safe space for New Yorkers with mental illness to live, to heal, and be cared for.
Now, when it comes to the proposal of having cops on every single overnight train, Hochul says that she believes today that this will cost $77 million, and she'll be releasing more details on that tomorrow.
Now, here are the crimes across the 5 boroughs. We go to Kew Gardens Hills in Queens, where police make a disturbing discovery. A man's body was found inside 2 garbage bags under a bed in an apartment building.
Well, police performing a wellness check in Queens are now investigating a death.
Officials say they found a body in bags inside an apartment. Good Day's Robert Moses at the scene in Kew Gardens Hills with the very latest. Robert, what are you hearing from police?
Dan and Tashani, there is still a police presence here. I just saw an officer walking around this neighborhood, and it is a quiet neighborhood at that. This street is lined with tall trees and 2-story garden apartments. Certainly not the sort of place where you would envision a discovery like this taking place. Yesterday afternoon, police got a 911 call asking them to perform a wellness check at the apartment at 137-17 70th Avenue. When they got here, they found a man in his mid-50s dead under a bed, his body inside 2 garbage bags, one over his head, the other over his feet. Workers from the medical examiner's office took the body out of the apartment just as they found it inside the bag and will be examining it for signs of trauma. The medical examiner's office is responsible for determining the cause of death. At this point, it's still unclear how the man died. Among the possibilities, authorities say a drug overdose or perhaps a homicide, that is, death at the hands of another person. No one has yet been charged, though police have been speaking with 2 people who were present at the apartment. I mentioned that this is a quiet and safe part of the city. The numbers really bear that out. We're in the 107th precinct, which saw just 4 murders through all of last year. Again, we want to emphasize police have not classified this as a murder at this point. They're still investigating how this man died. I'm told that they will be executing a search warrant here to gather more evidence later on today as this investigation goes on. Live in Kew Gardens Hills this morning, Dan and Tashani, back to you.
Possibly more answers a little later on. Robert, thank you very much.
In the Mott Haven section of the Bronx, a 14-year-old boy was stabbed to death. Police have arrested and charged a man in this tragic case.
Did you do it? Did you stab that innocent child?
Breaking news out of the Bronx. An arrest in the fatal stabbing of a 14-year-old is a suspect responsible for other stabbings. Good evening, everyone. I'm Arthur Chien. That suspect now facing murder charges. This as police are searching for a motive and a potential link between the suspect in this case and other recent stabbings. Let's get right out to our Jessica Formoso. She is live in the Mott Haven section of the Bronx right now with the latest. Jessica.
And Arthur, police were able to catch that suspect pretty quickly, and all thanks to surveillance video, including footage from a Ring camera that led them to the suspect's home. Now, this was a senseless act of violence. A child killed by a man who police say is a career criminal who shouldn't have been out on the streets.
He called his father and told his father that he couldn't breathe and that he was scared. And his father heard him dying.
14-year-old Caleb Rios took that last breath on Friday morning as he made his way to school. Police say the high school student was minding his own business, walking on East 138th Street in the Mott Haven section of the Bronx, just around the corner from his apartment building, when police say 29-year-old Waldo Mejia walked up to him and stabbed him in the heart for no apparent reason.
Caleb receives 2 stab wounds to his chest, piercing his heart and his lungs. Caleb runs from his attacker, but falls down between 2 parked cars.
Mejia, who authorities say is a career criminal with a history of mental illness, walked out of the 40th Police Precinct Saturday afternoon, charged with second-degree murder, manslaughter, and criminal possession of a weapon. Waldo, did you do it? Did you stab that innocent child? Did you do it? Before his arrest, police say he was out on the streets stabbing people at random. According to the NYPD, just 5 days prior to allegedly killing the teen, also on East 138th Street, on the steps of the subway station there, Mejia allegedly stabbed a 38-year-old man in the arm.
We were able to quickly conclude that these 2 incidents were connected, unprovoked, and committed by the same suspect.
The suspect's criminal record dates back to 2015. He's been arrested 4 times for burglary, arson, possession of a 9mm loaded gun, and...
The most recent one occurred on November 27th, 2024, when Mr. Mejia was arrested for stabbing another victim's Ring camera with a kitchen knife. And importantly, was released on his own recognizance the very next day.
The last crime he committed in 2024 was not bail eligible. However, he was a repeat offender.
The status quo is just not working for New Yorkers. We do not have a system that puts the rights and needs of victims first.
Mejia was arrested early Saturday morning outside his home, which is near the crime scene. Police say they recovered a bloody knife along with a pair of white gloves he was wearing the morning of the murder. At the child's home, candles and flowers left in the lobby. Now, we tried to speak with Caleb's family. They did ask for privacy at this time. Caleb attended Bronx Leadership Academy, where he played football there.
Staying in the Bronx, we head to the intersection of 149th Street and Melrose Avenue, where an open-air drug market remains a troubling presence on the street. Officials are renewing their demands for city and state intervention.
Well, now to an update on a story we first brought you this past fall. An open-air drug market taking over a section of the Bronx.
All right, during a press conference earlier today, Congressman Richie Torres said not nearly enough progress is being made cleaning up the area. And as Fox 5's Arthur Chan shows us, he's blaming both the city and state.
The state of New York has stood by passively and done nothing.
Like a festering wound that won't heal, the open-air drug market at 149th Street and Melrose Avenue in the Bronx continues plaguing the neighborhood with heavy drug use in broad daylight, people shooting up, addicts doubled over and vomiting, all of it right in front of the eyes of the youngest of children.
You see the kids, look what they got to walk by. Look at that.
People, they don't really want to pass here, see people taking the MP.
From store owners losing business to residents losing their patience, Fox 5 first brought you the story in September of last year, recording the scene almost too gruesome to believe, seeing dozens shooting up right in front of us. New York Congressman Richie Torres wrote a letter to Mayor Adams demanding action, and while the city responded, when Fox 5 went back, we found the open-air drug market just ended up migrating half a block south and across the street into Roberto Clemente Plaza.
They all have issues and problems that they need worked on, and instead of just pushing them aside, find out what the problems is.
4 months later, when we visited again, we found the open-air drug market is still thriving despite the cold. So Torres is once again sounding the alarm, this time writing a letter demanding action from Governor Hochul and again Mayor Adams to shut the drug market down. In response, City Hall tells us they've removed more than 7,000 syringes and engaged with 860 people to initiate addiction treatment, but that more work needs to be done. Meanwhile, Richie Torres, who sources tell Fox 5 is going to run for governor against Hochul, blames the governor for laws he says are failing New Yorkers. He says the drug dealers at the open-air drug market pop right back onto the scene whenever they're arrested. Torres wants changes to the state's bail and discovery laws, which he says is the reason repeat offenders are constantly being released.
The repeat offenders know the rules of the game, and they are gaming a broken system in order to break the rules.
Breaking those rules at this hub means residents will have to continue navigating the maze of addicts here.
Down near City Hall, police are searching for an arson suspect who they say set fires in the area, including one in a subway car.
The NYPD is on the hunt for an arson suspect. Police say this suspect set 4 fires Friday morning between 2 and 4 a.m., including one on a subway car. 3 of the fires happened around City Hall. Authorities say the suspect started 2 fires damaging 2 vehicles, including an NYPD emergency vehicle. The suspect also threw a flaming cup into a trash can. The 4th incident happened in Woodhaven, Queens, when the suspect set a pile of garbage on fire inside a moving J train right next to a sleeping passenger. A retired arson detective from the NYPD weighed in on the case.
The individual is taking whatever opportunity he can to set a fire when he sees it. So more than likely, it's some sort of thrill for him.
Wow. There were no reported injuries from these fires. Thankfully, anyone with information on the case is being asked to call Crime Stoppers.
Inside a subway station on the Upper East Side, the MTA is trying to crack down on fare evasion by using spikes on the turnstile handrails.
The MTA is trying again to crack down on fare evasion underground.
Their latest endeavor focusing on riders who try to jump the turnstiles. Let's get right to Good Day's Briella Tomasetti. She looks at how they plan on stopping the problem, but are they really trying? Can they stop it, Briella, with this new feature?
That is a good question. We're all waiting to find out, Deshani and Dan. You know, some are optimistic about the MTA taking a new and somewhat drastic approach, but you know what they say, if there's a will, there's a way, and some people will try just about anything to avoid paying that fare. You know, they can put on gloves to prevent those spikes from hitting their hands, wiggle through a loose space. You know, you just have to use your imagination, and that's why others believe this is just a waste of time and money.
The MTA will be installing even more barriers in 100 additional stations. Also, bright LED lighting in every station by the end of the year. And the shameless toll evaders, fare evaders, will finally be stopped with modernized gates.
Turnstile handrails at the Lexington Avenue 59th Street station, which services the NRW 4, 5, and 6 lines. It's the agency's latest effort to combat fare evasion. In her State of the State address, Governor Hochul announced a plan to prioritize subway safety, which will include more NYPD officers on trains and platforms, new barriers, LED lighting, and modernized fare gates at 20 stations this year, plus 20 more in 2026. The spikes may deter people from using the handrails to lift themselves themselves over the turnstiles, but won't stop fare evaders from climbing over or underneath them or whatever else you can think of.
This will make the subway less chaotic, but also help strengthen the financial footing of the MTA.
Exit. Fare evasion costs the MTA about $500 million a year. In 2023, the MTA installed new gates designed to stop fare beaters, but a TikTok hack shows that those electric doors can easily be activated by simply swiping your hand over the exit sensor, and those aren't the only fees people are avoiding. Last week, city officials announced a proposal aimed at penalizing drivers who evade the new congestion pricing tolls by covering their plates with plastic, glass, dirt, or even bike racks to prevent gantries from reading them. The crackdown could include a $50 fine for parked cars with obstructed plates and additional penalties for those caught driving through toll areas undetected. An online public hearing will be held on February 6th, allowing people to weigh in on all of this. Interesting to see what comes out of that. Now, pivoting back to the fare evasion, last year the MTA started a pilot program at 3 different stations, including at 59th and Lex. It put a timer on emergency exit doors. Once a rider pushed the handle, there would be a 15-second delay before the door opened. The agency studied that and found a 38% decrease in evasion through that gate and a 7% decrease in evasion overall at those 3 stations.
And finally, we end in Sheepshead Bay, where a memorial service was held for Debrina Kawam, who was set on fire inside a New York City subway train.
Loved ones gathering in Brooklyn to pay tribute to Debrina Kawam. She was the woman who was burned to death on the subway last month in a story that shocked the city and the nation. Let's get out to our Kendall Green, who is live in Sheepshead Bay with more on the emotional vigil for Debrina. Kendall.
Hey, good evening, Arthur. About 30 to 40 people are inside this congregation right now to honor that 57-year-old victim that was burned to death on the F train in Coney Island. Let's just take a look at the video inside of the service right now as it goes on. Now, the service here at First Baptist was to honor Debrina Kawam, a resident of Toms River, New Jersey, who was sleeping on the F train in Brooklyn when police say Sebastian Cepeda, the man accused of her murder, set her on fire and watched her burn. Now, Kawam was reportedly a former cheerleader and Merck employee who fell into homelessness before becoming the victim of Cepeda's attack. Now, it took nearly 2 weeks for police to identify her following the incident, but now that has been confirmed, the interfaith community is making sure that she's remembered fondly, saying she's not just some victim on the subway, she was a family member, a loved one to a family deeply mourning her loss today. Now, this evening's service filled with songs, prayers, and much-needed words of encouragement.
It is unfathomable what occurred there. Unfathomable. that people didn't even stop to help.
She should have been saved from a horrible, brutal, and public death. Her story should not have ended in a violent attack on a subway train, not in New York City. But we failed.
Now, it's worth noting this is not the official funeral service for Debrina Kawam. There will be a private service with her family at a later date that media will not be attending.
That's this week's Crime in the City. Subscribe for more at youtube.com/Fox5NY.